Rick Dildine. I'm the artistic director at Alabama Shakespeare Festival in Montgomery, Alabama, and I am also the director of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's most famous plays. In fact, during his time period, it was probably his biggest selling play. Theater producers could always count on people wanting to see this play. There's a lot of mystery and lore around this play because it's full of danger. It discusses greed, ambition. It asks, what would you do to have your biggest dreams come true? I think a great play always starts with a what if question, and Macbeth certainly has some of those. What if our leaders' powers went unchecked? What if you pursued your darkest, deepest desires? This play is produced with 23 performers on stage. It has live music throughout, sword playing. It's set within a timeless Scottish era. So you'll be able to see medieval costumes, you'll be able to see sword play on stage, songs from the time period, and of course, great classical language. Shakespeare wrote in iambic pentameter, so there's a rhythm to how he performs his plays. Another important thing in this play is the use of witchcraft. And Shakespeare's audiences would have been really on top of that because at this time, England had its first king from Scotland, the first English king from Scotland. And Scotland had some issues with witchcraft. So when this play came up, Shakespeare's audiences would have been right on top of that because connecting to witchcraft during this time period was an act of treason. So as we produce Shakespeare today, we're always looking for ways that it connects to our audiences the same way that Shakespeare did during his time period. So I've been intrigued by the powers of our leaders. What does it mean to transfer power peacefully from one administration to the next? And I'm also really interested in the roles of fathers and sons. How do we pass along honor? How do we pass along morals? And how do we pass along what is right and wrong?
Hello everyone, I'm Cam Williams, Artistic Assistant here at ASF, and we're so glad you will be joining us for a School Fest performance of Macbeth. Now that you've heard from the director, we'd like to take you around the theater to hear from some of the other important people involved with the production. In this video, we'll focus on the production aspects of the play and how it makes its way to the festival stage for our audiences to enjoy. We'll see you back here at the end of the tour.
Hi, I'm Kim Church, Director of Production here at Alabama Shakespeare Festival. The Director of Production here is responsible for coordinating all the major shops in making a play. That is sets, costumes, sound, props, and lights. The Director of Production is essentially in charge of time, people, and money. And it's my job to corral those shops and coordinate them in producing a play. The costume shop is responsible for implementing the designer of any said play costumes-wise. So the designer will send their renderings and their designs to the costume shop, and they kind of build it to spec. Or they'll shop and buy things and make alterations. But they make things from scratch, absolute scratch. Patterns aren't bought, patterns are made here. In props, there's a set designer for each play, and props fall under set design. And props are, if you were moving your house from one house to another, props are everything that fits in a box. So if you could think about things that you put in a box, that's a props. And that could be shoes, belt, microwave. Anything that would fit in a box is considered a prop. You know, sound is its own character. Sound gives us our atmosphere. Sound gives us our feeling. In Macbeth, there's an actual band in this show, and so Macbeth kind of has a live band giving it a lot of those attributes, as well as the sound cues that will come from the sound designer, be it wind or crickets or atmospheric noises. Sound plays a big part in production. So the set is designed by William Bowles. He collaborated with Rick to kind of create a bit of a worn-torn atmosphere, and this set, while it's simple, is very intricate in the sense there's things on the set that have to be climbed on, and it was a bit of a tight turnaround because we closed Cinderella, which was a big show, and roughly about 4 weeks to get this show built and installed for tech.
With this show, there's almost two different worlds, I would say, within it that we've been kind of exploring. There's the world of human, so normal people living and breathing, acting as if we do in our normal lives. And then we also have the world of the witches, the enchantment, the magic, and they live in this kind of different setting of this grungy world that we're going to take us into. So when we're thinking about how does that work, we have to look at different things such as volume, mass, color, texture, visual aesthetic, along with what the costume looks like and how that plays into that world to really create this solid character. So if you see some of the wigs throughout the show, you'll see a lot of the witches, they seem to be a little bit more larger in size, a little bit more bigger than life in this sense of this mystical world that we don't know of. They're going to be more oddly shaped. They're not going to be your typical styles that you would see in a normal day-to-day life in this world. Whereas if you're looking at somebody like Lady Macbeth, Lady Macduff, or any of the other normal humans that live in this world, they're going to have more of a controlled, more tight style in the sense of how they live and work and react within this world, clothing and scenic and lighting and everything that happens.
So with creating these very specific character looks, the first thing that I look at is the renderings and speaking with Ryan and trying to figure out how are we going to make this idea a reality. Structure is a huge part of it, making sure we have a solid structure and basically finding ways to make the aesthetic fit on top of that structure. For the witches, for example, there's a lot of making them look gross. It's a lot of things that we don't typically do with other wigs. It feels very backwards when you're making them. It's ratting them out, making them look teased and gross and like they're just oozing. Whereas the other wigs are very concise, very symmetrical, very human, very easy to translate as, oh, this is a lady or this is a peasant woman, versus the witches that are relying mostly on structure and a little bit of terror.
Hello, my name is Paul Denhart, and I am the fight director for the production of Macbeth that you were about to see at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. What in the world is a fight director? Well, I think I have the best job on the planet. A fight director collaborates with the director, the designers, the actors to advance the story when necessary through creating violence on stage that not only just tells the story, but delineates character, establishes relationship, shows the consequences, horrific results of violence, and stages it in a way that's theatrically engaging, and at the same time making sure that it's absolutely safe, or as safe as possible for the actors to perform, sometimes up to 8 times a week. So this involves all kinds of things in terms of making sure they're at a proper or safe fighting distance, making sure that the choreographic pattern keeps them safe on a stage that often has multiple levels, to make sure that the audience is safe so that no weapons, for example, are accidentally launched out into the house of the theater. Well, Macbeth is known as one of Shakespeare's bloodiest plays. There are plays that are written that have more battle sequences, but none that really have this kind of emphasis on blood and also on the kind of guilt that can fester inside an individual who is responsible for violence. When we first started talking about this play, Rick said he wanted the violence to be as brutal, as ugly as possible, not to glamorize it, but to show that violence is always a horrific choice. When Shakespeare writes violence into a play, here's the direction he gives the fight director. They fight. Okay, what does that mean? So what I have to do as a fight director is mine the text for clues about what is going to happen in this violence. So I do that, and then I usually have a story meeting with the director and the two actors, or however many actors who are performing this fight, and say, what's your Macbeth? What would your Macbeth use as weapons? What would your Macbeth, how would this person fight? How would your Macduff fight? What we came up for this production is Macbeth fighting with a sword and shield and Macduff fighting with a sword and axe, which concludes the play in a really brutal fight that I hope will be theatrically engaging and also bring the whole cycle of the story to an end.
So my name is Benjamin Bonenfant, and I'm playing the role of Macbeth in the play Macbeth at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I always love working with Shakespeare. Shakespeare scripts I find are easier to memorize because of the music and the language. There's a rhythm to it. It just kind of locks in your brain in a different way, and the heightened imagery is just something that I really enjoy trying to explore within every piece of text. With this one in particular, I find that this play has a lot of shared lines where the poetry doesn't get completed at the end of one piece of, one person's speech, and the next person finishes the last meter of that last line, and so they're jumping on top of each other, and it lends itself to this kind of speed, like things are running away with themselves and just toppling over themselves all throughout the play. So it's really fun to have an example like this of one where the actual poetry gives you some stage direction in terms of how this needs to move. I do think as an actor, at least for me, preparing to play a role like Macbeth is pretty intimidating, just because so many great actors over the years have played it and so many scholars have studied it. There's so many opinions pre-existing out there that you feel in some sense like you're going to come up against or you have to live up to. And also it's just a scary role in a way. He goes to very dark places. But I find that the more that I get to interact with this material, over time that all gets stripped away, all those expectations, because he's a very raw character, and his humanity is something that is easy for me to connect to, and then I'm not thinking about any of that anymore. I feel like I'm just getting to know him better and better.
Wow, costumes, props, lights, sound, and scenery are all coming together for this production. We can't wait to see you at ASF. To view our free study guide and find neat classroom activities, visit asf.net/education. And don't forget to bring your mask, as you'll need it to enter the theater. We'll see you soon.